Ove figured he would go round slowly a couple of times just to check the lay of the land, but then suddenly caught sight of the Mercedes thundering along the main road toward the shopping center. So this was where he'd been heading, that suit with the plastic lids in his ears. Ove didn't hesitate for a second. He put his foot down and barged his way out of the junction into the road. The Mercedes slammed on its brakes, firmly pressing down on the horn and following close behind. The race was on. The signs at the car park entrance led to traffic to the right, but when they got there, the Mercedes must also have seen the two empty slots as he tried to slip past Ove on the left. Ove only just managed to maneuver himself in front of him to block his path. The two men started hunting each other across the tarmac. In his back mirror, Ove saw a little Toyota turned off the road behind them, follow the road signs, and enter the parking area in a wide loop from the right. Ove's eyes followed it while he hurtled forward in the opposite direction, with a Mercedes on his tail. Of course, he could have taken one of the three slots, the one closest to the entrance, and then have the kindness of letting the Mercedes take the other. But what sort of victory would that have been? Instead, Ove made an emergency stop in front of the first lot and stayed where he was. The Mercedes started wildly sounding its horn. Ove didn't flinch. The little Toyota approached from the far right. The Mercedes also caught sight of it and too late understood Ove's devilish plan. Its horn wailed furiously as it tried to push past the Saab, but it never stood a chance. Ove had already waved the Toyota into one of the free slots. Only once it was safely in did Ove nonchalantly swing into the other space. The side window of the Mercedes was so covered in saliva when it drove past that Ove couldn't even see the driver. He stepped out of the Saab triumphantly, like a gladiator who had just slain his opponent. Then he looked at the Toyota. "Oh, damn," he mumbled, irritated. The car door was thrown open. "Hi there," the lanky one sang merrily as he untangled himself from the driver's seat. "Hello, hello," said his wife from the other side of Toyota, lifting out their 3-year-old. Ove watched repentantly as the Mercedes disappeared in the distance. "Thanks for the parking space. Bloody marvelous," the lanky one was beaming. Ove didn't reply. "What's your name?" the 3-year-old burst out. "Ove," said Ove. "My name is Nazanin," she said with delight. Ove nodded at her. "And I'm Pet," the lanky one started saying, but Ove had already turned round and left. "Thanks for the space," the pregnant foreign woman called out after him. Ove could hear laughter in her voice. He didn't like it. He just muttered a quick "Fine, fine," without turning round and marched through the revolving doors into the shopping center. He turned left down the first turning and looked round several times as if afraid that the family from next door would follow him, but they turned right and disappeared. Ove stopped suspiciously outside the supermarket and eyed the poster advertising the week's special offers. Not that Ove was intending to buy any ham in this particular shop, but it was always worth keeping an eye on the prices. If there's one thing in this world that Ove dislikes, it's when someone tries to trick him. Ove's wife sometimes jokes that the three worst words Ove knows in this life are better's not included. People usually laugh when she says that, but Ove does not usually laugh. He moved on from the supermarket and stepped into the florist. And there it didn't take long for a rumble to start up, as Ove's wife would have described it, or a discussion as Ove always insisted on calling it. Ove put down a coupon on the counter on which it said 2 plants for 50 crowns. Given that Ove only wanted 1 plant, he explained to the shop assistant, with all rhyme and reason on his side, he should be able to buy it for 25 crowns, because that was half of 50. However, the assistant's brain that SMS tapping 19-year-old would not go along with it. She maintained that a single flower cost 39 crowns and 2 for 50 only applied if one bought 2. The manager had to be summoned. It took over 15 minutes to make him see sense and agree that Ove was right. Or, to be honest about it, the manager mumbled something that sounded a little like bloody old sod into his hand and hammered 25 crowns so hard into the till that anyone would have thought it was the machine's fault. It made no difference to Ove. He knows these retailers were always trying to screw you out of money, and no one screwed Ove and got away with it. Ove put his debit card on the counter. The manager allowed himself the slightest of smiles, then nodded dismissively and pointed at a sign that read, "Card purchase of less than 50 crowns carry a surcharge of 3 crowns." Now Ove is standing in front of his wife with 2 plants, because it was a question of principle. "There was no way I was going to pay 3 crowns, rails Ove, his eyes looking down into gravel. Ove's wife often quarrels with Ove because he's always arguing about everything. But Ove isn't bloody arguing. He just thinks right is right. Is that such an unreasonable attitude to life? He raises his eyes and looks at her. "I suppose you're annoyed I didn't come yesterday like I promised," he mumbles. She doesn't say anything. "The whole street is turning into a madhouse," he says defensively. "Complete chaos. You even have to go out and reverse their trailers for them nowadays. And you can't even put up a hook in piss," he continues as if she's disagreeing. He clears his throat. "Obviously, I couldn't put a hook up when it was dark outside. If you do that, there's no telling when the lights go off. More likely they'll stay on and consume electricity. Out of the question." She doesn't answer. He kicks the frozen ground, sort of looking for words, clears his throat briefly once again. "Nothing works when you're not at home." She doesn't answer. Ove fingers the plants. "I'm tired of it, just rattling round the house all day while you were away." She doesn't answer that either. He nods, holds up the plants so she can see them. "They're pink, the ones you like," they said in the shop. "They're perennials, but that's not what they're bloody called. Apparently, they die in this kind of cold." They also said that in the shop, but only days so they could sell me a lot of other shit. He looks as if he's waiting for her approval. The new neighbors put saffron in their rice and carry on like that. They're foreigners, he says in a low voice. A new silence. He stands there, slowly twisting the wedding ring on his finger, as if looking for someone else to say. He still finds it painfully difficult being the one to take charge of conversation. That was always something she took care of. He usually just answered. This is a new situation for them both. Finally, Obed squats, digs up the plant he brought last week and carefully puts it in a plastic bag. He turns the frozen soil carefully before putting in a new plant. They've bumped up the electricity prices again, he informs her as he gets to his feet. He looks at her for a long time. Finally, he puts his hand carefully on the big boulder and caresses it tenderly from side to side, as if touching her cheek. I miss you, he whispers. It's been 6 months since she died, but Obed still inspects the whole house twice a day to feel the radiators and check that she hasn't sneakily turned up the heating.